Welcome, Bronco Nation, my game preview for Boise State versus Appalachian State. The Broncos taking on the Mountaineers on the Blue this Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Mountain Central Time. Boise State will be premiering on FS1 in this game and will be given an 85.6% chance of winning. This is a much bigger game than people are giving it credit for. There are a couple of things at stake in this matchup. First off is the title of Ultimate Blue Collar Program. I know Boise State is the Ultimate Blue Collar Program. It's in their motto, but Appalachian State is another one of those programs that has shown that blue collar spirit. There are a lot of similarities on the other side of the field this week for Boise State, a program in Appalachian State that doesn't have the benefit of the large TV market, has had to work and churn for every single thing that they have gotten. Nothing has been given. A history as a giant killer, much like Boise State, obviously Michigan, remembering that past game very well. So this is a program that is in a lot of ways has kind of followed the Boise State blueprint and done a lot of similar things. Now again, not in any way the same as the Boise State Bronco program, but this is a program with a very similar culture to Boise State on the other edge of the field. On the other side of that, they are also a representative here of the Sun Belt and one of the top teams in the Sun Belt. The American Athletic Conference and the Sun Belt are the two premier programs on the East Coast, and right now they are both fighting and clawing to see who is going to be able to take the lead. Season to season depends really on who is the better conference overall, top to bottom. And for Boise State, this is a team in Appalachian State representing the Sun Belt that this win is going to carry shockwaves, much like the USF game has the potential to do so, and it probably will end up having an impact in future seasons. This is an opportunity for a game that will carry shockwaves into future years, as well as a benchmark for Boise State and the new Pac-12 versus the Sun Belt. The Pac-12 is not competing with the Power Four. I mean, anybody with a rational, honest perspective is not saying that. This is going to be a program that's having to compete with the other G5s. It's a G6 type level conference with the teams that are joining it, and this is one of those teams. This is one of those teams that Boise State is going to have to match up against in head-to-head reckonings when you're trying to compare who gets the nod to the to the CFP. This is going to be one of those teams that's looked at, and this is a big game for Boise State in that sense. So this is a big game on both accounts because, again, App State is a program I've respected for a very long time. I think it's very similar cultures. It's going to be exciting in that element, but at the other end, this is actually a very good team, a much better team that people give them credit for, and a game that has an opportunity for Boise State to overcome some of the impact that lost to USF. If they can get a win versus one of the top teams in the Sun Belt, that will carry for seasons to come. So we're going to preview this game. We're going to look at the series history for Boise State versus App State. There's one game. We'll talk about that. We'll look at key players for Boise State versus Appalachian State, and we'll look at keys to the game for Boise State. So again, there is stuff in this video for Appalachian State fans as well if you want to stick around. But Boise State fans, this is the opportunity, the time where we get to talk about my favorite thing in all my videos, which is the score prediction challenge. This is your opportunity to get involved in the video. Go down in the comments below right now, pause the video, and give me your score predictions. Give me your thoughts on the game overall, your predictions, and then your score prediction. Of course, my incentive in this is I get an opportunity to talk to all of you and comment on every single comment that gets put down there and have a conversation, which is my favorite part of all my videos. For you, the incentive is an opportunity to win the Ashton Jeanty jersey. Again, whoever gets the right score prediction or the closest score prediction will be entered in a raffle to win that. There's multiple people that are right, that have the exact right score. Multiple people will win. So put your score predictions down below. Appalachian State fans, hey, you can get involved in this duel as well if you want to. But Boise State, App State fans, down below, score predictions and comments, any predictions you have for this game. While you're putting those in, I'll tell you briefly real quick about our sponsor for this video. Expedia Cruises of Boise. They're opening up a store at 13601 West McMillan Road, and they're having their grand opening this Saturday, the 27th at 11 a.m. So well before kickoff for Boise State. You can come by, tailgates, eats, prizes, giveaways at noon. They're going to have autograph opportunities with three legendary Boise State Broncos and TJ Acree, Ricky Chargacho, and Tyreek Jones. And at 1 p.m., they're going to have an opportunity to hear from Pete Hayes of Holland America Cruises. So come by, get those free autographs, get that tailgating prizes. Here's some great opportunities from Expedia Cruises here in Boise. Be part of this grand opening, and then you can roll over the Boise State game. Highly encouraging all Boise State fans to check that out. Thank you to Expedia Cruises for sponsoring this video. Now, the series history between both of these teams. Hope everybody's comments are back and your score predictions are in. Let's move forward with the rest of the video. The series history between both these teams. Again, just the one game, 1994, while both programs were still back in the FCS days. Boise State had a very close win on the Blue, 17-14. Now, that type of low-scoring affair with offenses like we're going to see in this game, probably unlikely, but it could be a very close game because, again, Appalachian State is a good program that Boise State is facing. Now, last season, not up to their standards, and this year, they're 2-1. They just lost last week to Southern Miss, two-score loss in that game, so not necessarily up to their standards this season either, but certainly that potential. And you look at that potential, what they've done since they've rejoined the FBS in 2014, they've had 9 or more win seasons in that time. They've been to their conference championship game 6 times, and they've won it 4 times. So this is a game, this is a team with a winning culture that they can draw on, and certainly capable of being a giant killer. Now, if Boise State wants to avoid that giant killer opportunity, it's going to come down to their key players. And we're going to start off here with Ty Benefield. Boise State secondary, much maligned, certainly, and I think deservedly so. But Boise State has had some shining faces on that secondary, and Ty Benefield is a player that has stepped up as a leader for this team. Last week versus Air Force, he had some mistakes, just like everybody on the defense did, but overall, he played an incredible game, and including his hitting and tackling in that matchup. He was headhunting out there. He had some huge hits versus Air Force that reminded you of those J.L. Skinner or Tyreek Jones type days for Boise State. Huge hits, and he also had the game-winning interception as well in the final drive for Appalachian State. App State, very good passing team. If Boise State wants to win this game and win it in a dominant type fashion, they're going to need Ty Benefield and this defense overall to step up. And it all starts, I think, with your leader there in the secondary in Ty Benefield. Now, for Boise State's offense, the star of last week was Dylan Riley. What an incredible performance for him. Historic performance. The only Boise State Bronco in the entire school history to have 4 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown in the same game. So far this season, 5 rushing touchdowns and receiving touchdowns, so 6 overall. He has 314 yards and a 9.8 yard average. This is an opportunity for him to come into this matchup riding off the high of last week and show that sustained continuation into this matchup, because Boise State has 2 other great running backs. Hidden very quietly underneath everything that Dylan Riley did was the fact that both of the other Boise State running backs actually averaged more yards per carry than Dylan Riley did overall. Dylan Riley had a huge game, explosive game. Boise State has 2 other great running backs in Sour Gaines. We've seen great flashes from, was a little banged up last week, so didn't play very much, only 3 carries. And Malik Sherrod, who started off the season rough, but has really come on strong, had a really nice rushing, about 40-yard touchdown run versus Air Force last week as well. So Dylan Riley, this is his opportunity. He is going to be given more touches, given more carries. He's not currently listed as a first or even second string. He's still currently listed as third string on the depth chart, but a performance like last week demands more carries. He is the kind of player that's not just a speed back. He has power, he has elusiveness, he has great ball carrier vision. He is going to need to be part of this offense at a higher level, and to continue to earn those touches, he's going to need to make the most of every single opportunity and continue what we saw last week into this matchup as well. And Boise State's been looking for that playmaker. They've been looking for that Ashton Jeanty type-esque player that can take over a game. We've seen flashes from the likes of Chris Marshall, even Ben Ford, but we haven't really seen anybody truly take over a matchup like Dylan Riley did. The spirit in this kid is incredible, and not just that, but his talent as well. Boise State needs this guy on the field, and he needs to have a big game in this one to continue to earn those touches that he clearly deserves. And then moving on to our last key player for the game is going to be tight end Matt Lauder. A player that we thought was going to be that take over the game type player for Boise State. Even some, myself included, potentially predicting that he could be the leading receiver for Boise State. Kind of a harkening back to the Jeb Pootsier early 2000s type days for Boise State when we had a tight end lead. But Matt Lauder hasn't had exactly the season fans expected. He's played okay, 10 receptions for 103 yards and a touchdown. But even on last week, that touchdown, he wasn't the primary go-to. He was the second look after Matt Wagner was covered. They came back to Matt Lauder, he was able to make the catch. He has more to give as part of this offense. Appalachian State is very good at stopping the run. The passing game is going to need to be a big part of that. I think that you're still developing that chemistry with the wide receivers. It's getting better, but Boise State wants to run the ball a lot. That means a lot of tight ends on the field. Having the opportunity to have a tight end step up and have a big impact in the passing game will help the defense to have to look at that formation a little differently. Matt Lauder needs to start to take over the game if Boise State wants to be a complete team and give those opportunities for the defense defense to have to focus on something else that will open up the running game and also open up opportunities for the wide receivers as well. Matt Lauder is a kind of player that can take over a game. He just hasn't yet, but we might be able to see it this week versus App State. Now, App State on the other side of the field, they have some good players as well. Their leader is going to be their quarterback, A.J. Swan, a transfer over from Vanderbilt. 879 yards passing on the season, a 63.1% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, but also 4 interceptions. And if you look at his trend throughout the season, it's not good. He has a lot to prove coming into this game. He's going to need to have his best performance to win this one. But throughout the last 3 games, he hasn't been trending in the right direction. He opened up the season with almost 400 yards passing versus Charlotte. But then the next game versus an FCS team down to 294. That's okay. You get backups in. But then last week in the loss versus Southern Miss, 217 yards passing. And a lot of interceptions as well. Did not deal with the pressure very well. As A.J. Swan goes, that is how the team will go. I think that goes for a lot of quarterbacks, but especially a program that is so dependent on that passing game in App State. They are going to need A.J. Swan to have a big game. Now, they're not a only passing game type team. They also have a good running back in Richard, and I'm going to mess up his name, and I apologize. That is not my strong point name pronunciation on this channel, so this is not a slight, and App State fans, correct me in the comments, but here he goes. Richard Dubinian, I think is how you pronounce his name, but he has played really, really well this season. Transfer over from Arkansas. He played 3 years at Arkansas, had a couple of good seasons, 200 or 300 yard type seasons, but nothing like what we've seen so far for him versus in the App State offense. 71 carries for 400 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 5.6 yard average per carry. He's had 3 games, and all 3 games so far, almost all of them went for 100 yards. He had a 111 yard performance in their opener, 194 yard performance versus the FCS school, and then 95 yards last week, so still almost 100 yards last week. Richard is going to need to step up into that role to supplement an App State team and the offense that is going to be, I think the secondary is going to potentially play better in this matchup. We'll talk about here in the keys to the game, but that's going to be a focus for Boise State, is stopping that pass. And so they cannot just come out and be a pass-heavy team, even if that is the Boise State weakness. They're going to have to present balance. That is where Boise State secondary starts to have problems, when they have to cover more than one thing. They're going to need the running game to have a big one in this matchup. Going up against Boise State's strength is stopping the run so far this season. He's going to need to have a massive contribution. If he can, it could potentially turn the tides for this App State passing attack. Now, when they are relying on that passing attack, their primary target is going to be wide receiver Jaden Burns, 24 receptions for 337 yards and 3 touchdowns. So 5 touchdown passes for Swan. 3 of them have gone to this guy. He has had 2 games of over 130 yards receiving this season. This is a guy that can burn you. Quite literally, this is a guy who can hurt you in the secondary, and he's gonna beat you in one-on-ones. He's gonna beat some 2Vs as well. You can try and double team this guy, and he's still gonna get open. So Boise State's gonna have to find ways to minimize and reduce the damage. If he is able to explode, and he is a deep ball type threat, if he is a great yard after catch as well type guy, if he is able to explode in this game, it's gonna be a different result than what Boise State fans are hoping. So Boise State is gonna need to stop all 3 of those options in addition to the rest of this roster for App State. And it's all going to start with my key number 1, which I've already hinted at, which is the secondary needs to answer the criticism. Boise State secondary, again, they are not playing well. Boise State's defense right now allowing 225.7 yards passing per game, which is 85th overall in the country. 225.7 yards per game doesn't sound too bad until you consider the fact that Boise State has played an FCS program and an option team in Air Force. Now, we'll come back to that option team in Air Force again, because I think that played a role a little bit in the performance we saw last week. But they've not played very well, and that is going up against a App State program that is very good in the passing attack. App State right now is averaging 357.7 yards passing per game. They are, the running game also important. We talked about, multiple 100-yard games already for running game, but they are a pass-focused type offense, and Boise State, their strength is going to pair well against Boise State's weakness, unfortunately. Demari Warren is on the hot seat. I think that's very, very clear right now. He is coaching right now for his career, for his job. And the Boise State secondary has a chance here to prove the trust that's been put in them. Boise State's defense has been put on a lot of islands with the pass rush, and this is an opportunity for them to prove the trust that's been put into them. Boise State's defense is, I think, better than what they have shown. Last week versus Air Force, I don't believe that was truly representative of what you would see out of this Boise State team week in and week out after the bye week transition, because it was an option program. And Boise State was so focused with a newer team that was not used to stopping that, option, that there were opportunities given up in the back end. Now, there were a lot more opportunities than should have been, but that's kind of accepted that is going to happen when you have an option offense that has been so hard to stop for Boise State. And they did a good job of stopping the option. They just couldn't stop the pass. But I don't think the performance last week is necessarily reflective of what Boise State is typically capable of doing with the right coaching. However, this is going to determine that. This is a prove-it game for this Boise State secondary. The rest of the team has been able to show the benefit of the FCS matchup and the bye week. They have been able, the offensive line has started to gel, the running backs, all of them are starting to explode. We're starting to see Max Metzen settling in and those connections. We're starting to see the defensive line, the linebackers playing much better. The one group that we haven't been able to see whether or not they have improved is the secondary, and again, I think it's because of the unique nature of stopping Air Force. This is their chance. This is their game. This is Damari Warren's chance. This is the secondary's chance overall. This is their game to prove that what we've seen through the first 3 weeks is not typical of what we'll see the rest of them. Boise State can be a really good team. They have a lot of potential. The first game versus USF, I do not think was truly representative of what this Boise State team is capable of. There's a lot of other factors there, and I think Boise State has adjusted well as the season goes on, but they cannot be elite. They cannot beat Notre Dame. They cannot have a chance to put themselves back into the conversation for the playoffs unless their secondary improves. And honestly, if nothing changes going forward the rest of the season, it's going to start to be a conversation about who do we have coaching back there and who's going to be able to get us to a position, not at the head coach level, obviously I'm talking about the secondary coach. It's going to be a conversation of who is capable of bringing out the best in these players, bringing in the best type of players, and putting in a system that allows Boise State to be competent in this area. That's just unfortunately where we're at right now. This game is going to determine that. App State, a perfect team to test yourself against because they're very, very good in the past. Now Boise State has an opportunity at home on the Blue to show the fan base where this secondary truly is. I'm not sure. I know a lot of fans are probably on the pendulum of they suck, and they might truly be the case. However, this is going to be that opportunity, that chance for Boise State secondary to prove either the fans right or prove everybody wrong and become a unit like we saw last season towards the end of the year that stepped up and became a strength of this program and not a liability. This is their turning point, and this is where it needs to happen this week versus Appalachian State. So key number one, secondary, it needs to answer the criticism. Key number two, use all your weapons. I have really loved what I've seen out of the progression of Nate Potter. Again, apologize for calling him Chris Potter constantly in my review video. Very tired after that one, and obviously both Potters have been involved with Boise State in the past. So apologies for that, but Nate Potter has done a great job growing his role as offensive coordinator. Again, I think that was a factor, just being brand new coordinator versus USF. That has not been what we've seen on this Boise State offense versus versus Eastern Washington or versus Air Force, and he has really grown into his capabilities here. The offense has become much more creative. The execution, what Boise State is doing on the practice field, is translating into the game. The is becoming much more efficient. The offensive line is gelling. There's much more chemistry between the passing game that's also increasing the level of the offensive play overall. And then we've seen much more creativity in the passing game as well. The screens plays have actually started to be used at a much better, used much more frequently in this offense. Tight end screens, running back screens, both effective versus Air Force, even Southern versus Eastern Washington. I really like what I see out of Nate Potter, but now he is faced with probably the most challenging moment of the season for him so far, because he just had his third string running back have a historic game versus Air Force. How do you manage that roster? You have a transfer from Fresno State, highly touted, come in, and he has played well. You've had Sire Gaines, or at least has grown into his role and played well in the last couple of games, especially last week versus Air Force. You've had Sire Gaines, who everybody had so many high hopes for, and after developing again through the first game, he has played really well. Very, very good game versus Eastern Washington, and also, even in his limited playing time, a good game versus App State. And then your third string running back goes out and breaks records in his chance to shine. How do you manage all of that? You have to use all of your weapons. It cannot just simply be one guy gets the ball. But at the same time, you also don't want to kill momentum. You don't want to do what Chip Kelly's doing with Ashton Genty, where you have a big play, you pull him out, and then he's chilling on the sideline, losing all of that energy, and then he comes back out and has to try and reestablish that. So how do you manage this roster? And that's what that's the job. That's what Nate Potter's being paid to do, is figuring out how to manage all of these playmakers together. He has to find a way to do that in a way that uses them each to the highest level of their capabilities and puts them into formations and systems and roles in this offense that plays perfectly to both maximizing their own skill sets, but also allowing all three to build off of each other and build that momentum. A very challenging task. And versus App State, a team that's very good at stopping the run, this is going to be your opportunity again to show how you manage that system. This is a very important game for Boise State in a couple of aspects. Can the secondary answer the criticism? And can Nate Potter show that he can manage a very, very talented offense? It is a great problem for an offensive coordinator to have, but at the same time, it is still a problem. And then you have the other side of the coin where Boise State's good at the running game, but the passing game still needs to be developed. The passing game has to be a factor in this, primarily because that's App State's weakness so far. They've allowed 61.7 yards rushing per game. They've allowed 212.7 yards per game passing, so just about 10 yards less than what Boise State has done on the season. That's a vulnerability, and Southern Miss definitely took advantage of that versus the App State last week. And so for Boise State, there is going to be opportunities in the passing game. You need to lean on your weapons and the offensive line and everything that they have done so well in the run game, but at the same time, you have a good passing game as well that started to show its potential. You have Ben Ford stepping up has been a huge highlight this season, but you also have Chris Marshall starting to show some flashes. You need to find an opportunity to let him go off as well, let him establish that confidence, because if he can unlock his next level of potential and you can combine him with what this running game can do for Boise State, this could be one of the best offenses in the group of six overall, and one of the top at the end of the season, one of the top offenses in the country. Honestly, if all of those pieces can click, you have to find ways to use all of that. A great challenge, but it's still a challenge nonetheless. So key number 2, use all of your weapons. And then key number 3, this will be a short one, but key number 3 for Boise State is give special teams a chance to establish some confidence. You're going to go up and play Notre Dame next week. You may not need special teams to win this game. You may, but you will need them to win versus Notre Dame. You're going to need special teams to be a factor in that matchup. And I'm specifically talking about kicking, because overall, I didn't mention it in my game review, I meant to, but overall, Boise State's kicking coverage has improved immensely in the fact that they're able to actually kick it out the end of the end zone now. Boomer doing a great job with his strong leg of kicking it out the back of the end zone. There have been no returns, no long returns at all for their opposing teams. And then punting's also stepped up extremely well in replacement of James Ferguson Reynolds. And then also in the return game, we've seen some real flashes out of Malik Sherrod as well. So all of those elements are working well. The one element that is still missing is that kicking game. And it's a massive hole. It is a chasm in this Boise State program that is changing everything. How the offense plays in the red zone, how defenses are going to be impacted by drives from the other team. You can hold them to a field goal, but that doesn't mean your team is still within distance of tying the game up, because you don't know that you can go out and kick a field goal. Boise State, this is our opportunity on the blue in front of a friendly crowd in a meaningful but still winnable game. Get an opportunity for the kickers to start to establish something that they can look back on in what is going to be the most hostile environment Boise State will play in all season long when they have to go into South Bend. That is going to be an absolute mind game fest for the kickers. They need something that they can look back on with some confidence this week of training coming into the Notre Dame game next week, but also in that moment, they need something. Give them an opportunity in this game to find that confidence. So 3 keys to the game for Boise State: secondary answers to criticism, use all your weapons, and give special teams a chance to establish confidence. So summarizing this matchup overall, a good App State team. 2-1 this season, not legendary like they have been in some of their past years, not elite, but still a good App State team, one that will challenge Boise State's weaknesses with their own strengths, certainly has the winning culture capable of coming out and getting a win on the blue. They were close to doing it in 1994. Is this their opportunity? 30 years later, or close to, or just over 30 years later, their opportunity to come in and get that win finally on the blue. They're certainly going to be pushing for that. Boise State, however, I really think we're going to see an improvement on the secondary, as I talked about at the beginning. They know the passing game is going to be the focus. They know that. They've heard all the criticism. They've heard all the critiques, whether they're on social media or not. They know the pressure, and they're not performing to their own standards. Boise State secondary has high standards for themselves, and they're not meeting them, just like the rest of this team. that is going to be a major focus. I would imagine that secondary play was the #1 focus in practice this week coming into this game. It has to have been. And so for Boise State stepping onto the field versus App State, that is going to be at the very front of their minds. They're also helped a little bit this week that for the first time this season, they don't have to face a running quarterback. The quarterback they will be facing has negative 14 yards rushing on his career overall. He is a pocket passer who does not perform very well against the pressure, by the way, which Boise State is very good at bringing. This is an opportunity for Boise State's secondary to not just step up and be a contributor in this team, but maybe even have a huge game and build some momentum going into next week, which would be so huge for them. I think everything, even though they are facing a team that is such a strong passing program, I think that this is their opportunity. They are set up perfectly to actually have a really, really big game in this matchup if they can show the potential that we saw from last season. I think they've been missing a little bit of that true leadership in the secondary, but I think Benefield is stepping up into that role nicely from what we saw versus Air Force. So I am expecting much bigger things for them. I think that Boise State's offense on the blue, where they have played so well since Spencer Danielson took over, and obviously, like I said, back-to-back games of 49-51 points for Boise State. I think that their offense is going to have a big game in this one as well. I think that the Boise State's running game is going to continue that strength and momentum. I think that App State, they are good against stopping the run, but they've also played a couple of not great programs there in Charlotte and Southern Miss, and also an FCS team as well. And so I think that Boise State's going to have opportunities to establish the run in this game. And on top of that, Boise State's passing game, I've really liked what I've seen out of them as they've come through the last few weeks. I think they've sneakily gotten a lot better than people even give them credit for. And this matchup with App State so focused on stopping that running game, I think you're going to start seeing those isolation type deep over the top passing opportunities that we haven't really seen so far for Boise State. I think we'll start to maybe see those here versus Appalachian State. And so for Boise State overall, I'm feeling very confident in this game. On the blue, a defense that I think will be focused on the one thing that Appalachian State does really, really, really well, and at the same time not having to stop a running quarterback, which I think overall has been the biggest harm, both in how the secondary has played, but also how the defense has played overall. That is where most of the big play type opportunities have come for the offenses Boise State has faced, has been from the running quarterbacks. Now the secondary doesn't have to think about that, and they can focus on stopping the pass. And also, the App State's not going to get the boost of those long runs that previous teams have gotten that's given them a chance or given them the win versus Boise State. I like what I see out of this defense and their potential. I like what I've seen out of the offense. I really think Boise State's offense is starting to click at a mid-season type form already after that bye week and opportunity to readjust. And Appalachian State, their team, I have a lot of respect for their program, but they're not the Appalachian State team of even a couple of years ago. They are a team that right now is going through some rebuilds. They had to replace one of their greatest quarterbacks in their school history, and they replaced him with a quarterback who is from some of the worst years of Vanderbilt's history. This is before the days of Diego Pavea. This is not a quarterback that I think is going to come on and challenge Boise State in the same way as other quarterbacks they will face this season. And so for Boise State versus Appalachian State, I am predicting a big win for Boise State. I'm predicting 56-27. I think Boise State shuts down the Appalachian State passing attack overall, gives them some opportunities certainly, but the offense comes roaring in hot. The defense, especially when it comes to pressure, puts a lot of pressure on this Appalachian State offense. I think we see some turnovers, a couple of interceptions for this Boise State secondary as they regain their momentum and come into their next week game versus Notre Dame with a lot of strength and momentum on their side. This, I think, is going to be a great game to watch. So Boise State Broncos fans, make sure that you are tuning in on FS1, 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time on FS1, like I said, Saturday. And also make sure that you are attending the grand opening on Saturday as well of Expedia Cruises over at Boise, starting at 11 a.m. and autographs starting at noon. So thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe. Again, if you're new to the channel, it's so important that you are contributing and part of this conversation, because that's my favorite part of all of these videos, getting to have that discussion with each and every one of you. And if you liked what you saw here today, please like and subscribe as well. And again, a chance to win an Ashton Genty jersey, but more than that, a chance to be able to have a conversation and be part of Bronco Nation here as we all get to look forward to what should hopefully be a very big win for Boise State. So thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and as always, go Big Blue!